video was on how to make bread, and now I'm going to show you how I take that one basic recipe and turn it into a staple at our house. This makes 2 meals out of the 1 loaf, and I will show you how I do it. So we are at the point in the recipe where you mix up the dough and let it sit on your counter, and this is where we would shape it into the loaf. But instead of shaping it into a loaf, we're going to scrape it out onto our prepared board with flour. And I like to use a scraper because that just makes the bowl a lot easier to clean. So we're going to scrape it out onto the flour. Once we get it onto the flour, we're going to do kind of the same thing that we did with the loaf, where we shape it into the loaf, making sure that it's really nice and floured, pinching in the edges so that we get a nice round loaf. I'm going to flip it over, pinch it off, flip it over, and get it really nice and floury. So this is where we would do our second rising, but instead we're going to take a cutter, a dough cutter, and cut this into 8 even pie slices. So I like to cut it in half, then cut it in half again, and then cut each of those in half to give us our 8. So once we have the 8, we're going to kind of do the same thing that we just did where we shape it into a ball. We're going to tuck all of the edges in, and then in the very middle where all the edges come together, we're going to give it a really good pinch and roll it in the flour. Make sure that it's nice and coated in the flour, and then we're going to put that on a baking sheet, and we're going to let this rise for the second rising. So we're going to do that to all 8 of the pieces. Get them nice and floured. They're about the size of like a tennis ball, maybe, in between a tennis ball and a golf ball. There really is no science to this. It's just pretty much pinching it into a ball and making sure that it gets a good coating of flour. Okay, so here we have the 8 dough balls. They're ready for the second rising. So I'm going to take a clean cookie sheet and just cover it over the top. Okay, we're back. It's the afternoon. These little balls of pizza dough have been resting for about 2 hours, and they are ready to press into pizza crusts. My dough balls have been sitting on the counter all afternoon, and now they are ready to press. Look how beautiful they look. They rise well. I have this tortilla press. It's an electric tortilla press. It plugs in. It's Cucina Pro. It has this nice non-stick coating, but I always like to put some canola oil on or some type of Pam spray to keep everything from sticking, because these can be pretty sticky. So in between each pressing, I give the tortilla press a little spray, stick it on the press, and give it a good press. It's a really soft dough, so it goes really simply and really quickly. I like to leave it on here for about 10 seconds and then flip it for about 10 seconds. That just gives it a little bit of cooking time so that then it's not doughy, and so that I can stack them one on top of the other. So we're just going to continue doing this through all 10 of the dough balls, letting them sit for about 10 seconds on each side. And then I just stack them in a pile on top of each other. Because they have a little bit of baking, they're able to stack really nicely on top of each other and not stick, even when they're still warm. So I'm down to my last pizza crust. And here are the finished crusts. They've been pressed. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tool that I found on Amazon, and this is going to poke a whole bunch of little holes into the crust so that it doesn't rise when I bake it. I want this to be a really thin artisan crust that doesn't do any rising. So I'm gonna put this on a cutting board and just give it 2 swipes across. It's super simple. And then I just stack them in a stack. And I'll do that with all 10 of them. And they are good to go. Then you have this nice stack that you can now put in the refrigerator. If you're going to use them tonight, you can just leave them out on the counter, but if you're going to use them for another day, you can put them in the refrigerator and use them another day. So right before I make the pizzas, I'm going to put them in a 425 degree oven for about, maybe 3 to 4 minutes. And that way they get hard and crispy, so that then we can put the toppings on without them getting soggy. So I put them in a Ziploc bag, and we use these for a lot of things. We use them kind of like pita bread in a panini press for different recipes. We also use them for tortillas and pizza crust for every Friday night. It's just a really simple, versatile recipe that you can make super quickly and have for the whole week.